Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our latest webinar. Today, we're going to be looking at top tips for every single user on 365 and Windows. We're going to go through things that you perhaps should know but don't really know, and that's okay because who's trained you? So that's not a problem. We'll take you through some of the key things. Now, today I've got Tom on the line from our technical team who's going to take us through, walk us through all the content. Today, we're going to look at those things that we perhaps all assume we know and perhaps we don't. And that's okay, as we say, you know, who knows all these things. And quite often we've got ways of achieving the outcome that we could actually do quite quickly. So Tom's going to share his screen in a second, and I'll get Tom to take us through everything we're going to cover, right the way from basic keyboard shortcuts to Windows, through Word, PowerPoint, Teams. But if you have got a question, we'll come to them at the end. If you've got anything specific, we'll try and address that. So Tom, let's get your screen shared and get started straight into today's session.
Fantastic. Let me just get this up. Here we go. Right. I think that should now be live. Yep. So really the intention of today, as Dave said, was to sort of start off with some, really simple shortcuts. And I'm sure that a lot of these you'll be familiar with. I've been doing a little bit of research. There's a few that I wasn't aware of, but it's going to be quick fire. So we are recording this. So if we do go too fast, there's always the ability of going back, playing at half speed with the added bonus of getting it presented by Barry White. So looking purely at Windows, first of all, we're going to do just a couple of shortcuts. Now, we know that things such as Control A for control, select everything, Control C for cut, copy and paste. So Control C, Control X and Control Y. These are your sort of day-to-day ones, but it's where they actually work. So for example, if you're working in Windows, you can actually use those same shortcuts. So if again, there's a little tip, hold down the Control key and scroll with your mouse wheel, and you can change the size of your icons. But if you were to select an icon, Control C to copy it, and then Control V, it will give you a copy. If you want to move it, Control X as in cut, and Control V will then paste it onto wherever it is you want to move it. So a really quick way of moving documents. And as with those shortcuts, Control Z is an undo, and again that will step back. So a way of just keeping your hands on your keyboard if you're moving content around can sometimes actually speed things up. But that mouse wheel will actually work everywhere. So if I'm in a picture, I can hold down that Control key and then zoom with the mouse wheel, and it will zoom in and out to wherever it is that I am, my mouse pointer is located. So again, a quick way, and that works with, if I'm in calendar, for example, I can zoom in and out of my calendar as well using that mouse wheel to get different views. So really useful, that one. Looking more at the actual Windows desktop, there's a lot of keyboard shortcuts that you can use for this as well. So when we have, and I'll just drag a load of different things onto my screen. This is sort of normally what we have within our desktops at any one time, is we've got a load of screens, and we can't actually see the wood for the trees quite often. But a couple of shortcuts here is the little Windows key, which is down at the bottom of your keyboard towards the left-hand side, a little shape like a Windows logo. If you hold that down while you press M, for example, minimize all, gets rid of, so you can see your desktop, and then Shift Windows key, M will bring everything back. Windows key and D will let you quickly see the desktop, so you can just toggle that on and off by just holding down the Windows key and pressing the D. And then a really good one, I won't do it now because it'll lock my machine. When you need to walk away from your desktop, Windows key and L, and it will just lock your machine, and then you'll be prompted for your credentials when you come back. But just a really quick way to keep that machine locked down and make sure no one else can use it while you're not there. To bring up some applications, we've got Windows key and E will launch Explorer. Windows key and S will bring up the search box. And then you can even move into sort of some other services as well. So a Windows key, Shift and S brings up a screenshot. So you can grab a section of your screen if you wanted to put it into a Word document or an email. And when that is being captured, it will save it to the clipboard, but then you can actually open that image in the Snip and Sketch tool, and you could do some annotation to that, for example, before you save it or share it. The other really useful one is when you've got these multiple screens up on your monitor, and you're trying to work between two, you can snap these screens. So if you drag it up to the top of the window, you can see a sort of a slight outline of a window suddenly expand. If you let go, it will make that window go full screen. And if you drag it back down again, it will bring that screen size down to as it was previously. But this can also work with multiple documents. So if I've got two spreadsheets, one's a CSV file, one's a spreadsheet, and I need to work on these side by side, you might normally kind of go, right, I'll drag this one up here and, you know, resize that corner, move it down, and this on up to the other side. A really quick way is to drag it to the left of the monitor, and it will snap, and it will then ask you what other screen it is that you want to have sitting alongside it. And that's just a really quick way to get those two. If you then hover your mouse between the two the two windows, you see the icon changes to two arrows. You get a slight thicker sort of selection bar, and you can then drag that across to change the percentage of that screen that you have between those two windows. So a quick way of being able to sort of change the focus of where you're working on those two windows. You can also do this with, you know, multiple windows as well. So we've got it with two. I could snap that one into the top left, that one down there. This one I'll snap up to the top, and then I will bring in that down into the bottom right hand corner. So a way that you could quickly move across those you know, multiple versions of Windows. You can also use keyboard shortcuts for that. So if you've got this screen and I wanted to snap it, so let me just move these around slightly. If I wanted to snap this screen, I can use the Windows key and then the arrows. So Windows key left will snap it to the left-hand side, Windows key left to the left-hand side. So again, it's a sort of quick way, and then up into that corner. So you can use, and I'm just using the left, right, and up and down cursor keys to actually move that particular window around the screen. The other really good thing is when you're working with multiple documents is if you're kind of almost splitting how you want to work, and you have, right, this is my email, this is the sort of my day-to-day admin stuff, but I'm working on a spreadsheet and I don't want any distractions, and that needs to be full screen, or I need to have a couple of things open on the window. Using multiple desktops, and you can get to that by the little icon down on the taskbar just next to the search. But again, keyboard, you can use Windows key and Control D. So Windows key, Control and D, and it will then bring you to a new desktop, and you can move between those desktops by holding down the Windows key, Control, and then left and right. And that allows you to have a separate window where you might open up a separate version of you know, some applications, and you can then keep those two things completely separate. You can also view those by this icon down on the taskbar, and you can see your desktops up here, and you can also create new desktops. But it also allows you to move content between the desktops. So for example, my calendar, I want to pop that onto that desktop, so I can just drag and drop it into there. And always demo gods didn't want to play. Up into the second desktop. Well, it should work. Let's try that again. There we go. So that worked with that one. So that's how you could move those windows between those multiple desktops. And as soon as you don't need those desktops, you can click the little X, and it will close that desktop, and any of the windows that were open on those other desktops will all get consolidated down into that sort of first one. But while we're in this view, this is a really useful one as well, because not only does it give you a visibility of your open applications, but you can also see the documents, websites, etc., that you've been looking at, you know, over the last, you know, and this is say going back in my case 17th of January. and again, I can search. So a quick way of finding documents or websites that you've looked at recently. So yeah, a couple of really quick and quite useful little shortcuts there. While we're within Edge, and let me show you just another quick one. I want to work in Edge, but I've got all of these other windows open. If I click and hold on my mouse and just shake, it will minimize all of the other windows except for the one that I was using. So now I'm in Edge. Edge gives you a great way of working with multiple websites via tabs. Sometimes you actually want to have these things side by side. You can click and hold the tab with your mouse, move it around on the taskbar, on the tab bar, or move it out altogether. And that way you get two instances. And again, you could snap these two side by side, and that just gives you that visibility of two windows to look at websites. You can also use a service called Collections. Now, Collections is a great way of bringing together resources that you use on the internet that similar to sort of bookmarks, but it allows you to kind of keep them more active, and you can add in additional things, such as you could add a OneNote to it. You could add a Word document to this collection. You could also add a quick note to this collection as well. Whenever you go into a collection, whether it be the PDF document as this one, you've got the website's documents, but also any notes that you may have put with it. So a collection is a good way of being able to bring together some of the ways that you work with similar content. Now, there's a really good service within Office called Lists, and Lists sits really as a SharePoint tool. So SharePoint sits underneath all of your teams, and within that you have the ability of creating lists. Really useful. This demo I've got is just showing a fictitious sort of HR record, but having to go into the team and then open up SharePoint and then navigate to the team site. Yeah, I could do it with a bookmark, but actually there is Microsoft Lists, and you can get to it via your Office 365 homepage, and Lists will be sort of, if it's not shown here, clicking all apps, it will then give you the option, and I just did that so we can actually see it, to actually jump to Lists. But if you've got a list that you use regularly, what you can do is use Microsoft Edge to create an app of this list. So what that means is if I click these three arrows and click apps, I have the ability to install this site as an app. You can see I've already got a couple of others here for Teams and Office and Outlook, etc. But if I install this site as an app, I can give it a name, records, and then install that. But what that really means is, behind the scenes, it asks me whether I want to pin it to a taskbar, pin it to the start. Do I want to create a desktop shortcut? Do I want to start it when our device logs on? So if I allow that, now if I close this and minimize everything, what it gives me is that shortcut, both from the desktop, from the taskbar. If I want to, I can also pin it in here. And if I click on that, what it will do is it opens up like a mini application within Edge. You can see I don't have the usual navigation, but I get all of the functionality of that team site. So if I wanted to create a new item, I can do that, and it's sort of self-contained as a mini application. Just as an aside, Teams by default isn't the prettiest in terms of breaking down how your records are edited and added. So this gives you the opportunity of you can configure this layout. Now, it looks a little bit daunting. There's lots of websites that talk you through it, but it just gives you the ability of creating a header, creating a body, and determining what fields go into a particular section. And then you can also have a little footer as well if need be, but a really quick way of giving you quite a quite a nice looking form to fill in. And then lastly, within Teams, within Lists, you can use filters, and this is a really quick and really simple way of filtering data when you've got a large amount. So the little button up here gives you by default a number of filters that it will pick out, but what you can do is you can click any field and say I want to filter based on gender, and it will then give me the opportunity to select that field, and I can then apply that, and it will then provide a particular filter of that content. And if I then only wanted to see those in the West and those that joined in 2008, I could quickly filter down to that content. But then you can also save that view so you can automatically select that. So at the moment I've got group by region, I've got group by year joined, and I can revert back to that all items. But you can then create those custom views that give you a way of looking at that content in the way that you want to see it or more regularly need to see it. Now, going into Office, let me bring up Word. There's a couple of really simple things within Office that I think, you know, when I've seen people working and shown them this tip, it's kind of a bit of a wow, didn't know that was there. So that's kind of really what the aim of this is. So if we've got some content, and a quick way of actually creating some content is another little shortcut. If I go equals lorem, and lorem was the sort of a Latin format used by typesetters, where it gives you an amount of content, but doesn't use any real words, but just allows you to actually see what that may look like as a place setter. So type that, the number of paragraphs that I want, so we'll go with 5 paragraphs, then a comma, and the number of sentences, so I'll go with 10 sentences. And as soon as I press enter, so it gives me some default text that I can then use. But if you've got that text and you've got it where you've formatted it with a different font and a bold, and you've given it a different color, etc., and you can't quite remember exactly which color it was that you used, but you want to format some other text in the same way. If you just select a little bit of that text that's got the right formatting, and you've got this little paintbrush, it's on there, and it's also on here called the Format Painter. Clicking on that, you can then drag over other text, and it will copy that format from one to another. So a quick way of ensuring that you get consistent formatting across your document. Another way is using styles. So if I give just a couple in here and put a subtitle here, using these titles and headings allow me to quickly change the title. You can use under the design layout. There is a number of different ways, and once you've selected titles using that formatting, it recognizes that that is a title and will therefore update the formatting correctly. It will also give the ability that when you insert a table of documents, a contents page, it will use those headings as the titles, so it will automatically add those in. So a quick way of creating a table of contents. The other thing within Word is looking at tabs. Now, tabs are really useful when it comes to formatting your document. You need to be able to see the ruler, so we turn the ruler on. But what a tab allows you to do is, instead of going, tabbing across to get to a point on the screen, if I go back and turn on the view formatting, I can see all of these tabs marks go across, and by default it's about I think it's about 0.5 centimeter. But this little icon over on the left hand side is a left tab, and if I click on that, I can cycle over the types of tabs that I want. So you've got a default left, a center, a right, and then you've got a decimal point as well. So wherever you've got decimals, that will be the point that tab is centered. So if I just click a tab on the taskbar and now tab across, it will go to that point. And if I tab across, add another one, just click and tab across, it will then move to those specific points. And if you select them, you can then move those tabs, and it will then update where any content has been referenced using that tab that you've selected. So that's a good way of ensuring you kind of get that consistent formatting. But the other point is, when you've got large content, how do you select it? So you can click and drag, but you can also double click to select a word, triple click to select a paragraph, but you can also Control and click to select a sentence. So again, a quick way of just ensuring that you get the right content, and if you only need to select a single sentence to make bold, you can do it that way. So looking at PowerPoint now. Now I've got a little PowerPoint here that I was going to show for Teams, but what this gives you is the ability of working with multiple slides. So if I've got a slide, let me just make this a little bigger. So if I've got a slide here and I want to use it again, but use it in a slightly different way, you can duplicate. But if you need to bring in slides that you've got and you know that you've used slides within a different presentation, or someone else within the office that you've seen a slide that has some content, what you can do is use the insert option and reuse slides. So this is really powerful way of actually looking all across the locations that you have access to be able to find a presentation that you need. So in this instance, I want the NMC. So it will then search for all of the presentations that I've got that include the NMC. I can then click on the presentation. It will open up the slide deck, and I can go, yep, that's the one I want, click and drag, and it gets added into clicked and drag and clicked on that, so that adds it into the slide deck. So a quick way of actually getting those consistent slides. And again, if this is set up with a master format, a design, that will just ensure that that gets covered across as well. So again, we've got things such as the format painter within here, so that gives you that ability of capturing those formats and copy them across slides in a consistent way. Right, jumping into Excel. Now, looking at that Excel spreadsheet, it's a CSV file, and this was the same HR data. Bit of a mess, trying to actually work out how things work. Really simple, quick tip is, again, a keyboard shortcut. So it's hold down your Alt key, and you can see, but by default, you get all of your corresponding letters that come up that refer to the shortcut key and how you would then navigate. So if I want to expand this spreadsheet, so I can see all of the content of the columns. At the moment, a lot of it is sort of truncated. Control A will select all, and I can press Alt H O I, and what that does is it's basically moving to H being the home tab, O being the format, and then I being the auto column width. So again, you could use that if you had these were all a little bit squished up. You could do the same thing, Alt H, O, and A to fit height. So again, that's a quick way of moving that around. If you wanted to edit a particular field, pressing down the F2 key, if I don't have my keyboard set properly, will just move you straight into that field, so you can start editing it. You don't have to click. So again, a way of ensuring you don't spend too much time moving around with your mouse. And also with when you're working with that table within an Excel format, one thing that I know I've done in the past is when I'm working with a file and I've got some data and I need to actually view that data slightly differently in terms of, well, I've got their first name and their last name, but I actually want first and last name together in a column. Now, you would normally use a concat function, but there's a new feature within Office which is called Smart Fill, and it actually intuitively tries to figure out what it is that you're doing. So if I start to type Shauna Buck in that field, and the next one I want to try, it's figured out that going, okay, you're taking the contents of column 4 and column 6 and you put them together. So let me just do that all for you. I press enter, and it's created a new column and updated 1,000 records with the format that I want. And it also works in the reverse. So if I insert a column there and I want to find out just a list of who are the email providers for these members of staff, so I could start typing Gmail, Walmart, And again, it's done the same and broken that down into just the particular part of that content, because it's recognized it was what came after the @ sign and before the dot sign. So there we go. Just a couple of other things in Excel. If you've got a table selected, so you're inside that table, a quick way and an easy way of being able to slice and get data in a similar way of using the drop down windows to get a view is something called a slicer. And a slicer is a way that you can filter your content in sort of a more intuitive way from a user's perspective. So we could look at this and go, right, what are the so I want to sort by gender, I want to sort by month joined, and I want to search by the state that they're in. And it creates these 3 slices, and I can move these around. I can move them outside the sort of the table window. I could add some rows ahead for it to go over. But just clicking on these will alter the content based on the options that I'm selecting within this. So again, once you save that, anybody that comes in to use this Excel file will have those slices, and they can then filter and manage the content accordingly. Appreciate this is a real quick run through, but just a couple of Excel ones. When you're typing in a cell and you actually want a bit more room and you want to say a new line, and you'd press enter, it put you into the cell below. What you can do is, if you want to do a carriage return, is Alt and enter, and that will actually then store that within the same cell. So a way that you can get multiple carriage returns, and a way of actually formatting the data within that that cell a little bit more in a slightly more friendly way. If you wanted to write the same data into multiple cells, so I can hold down the Control key, move around, type in the first cell, and then press Control and enter, it will write that content into multiple cells. So again, if you've got that and you are moving across multiple cells, that's a real quick way of actually getting that data and save having to copy and paste or move it around multiple times. And another quick one. If we've got this data and I've copied it, but I don't want that data to be in columns, I actually want to switch it. So I have the columns, which are the employee number, and then the ID number sits underneath that as a row. So how do I transpose that? So you can right click into a cell to bring up this content, and you've got the paste special. If you click the paste special right at the bottom, you've got the option here to transpose. And what that'll do is it will take that content, and I'll actually send it out in and I think it's because I've got some filters on here that it didn't quite copy as the way I was intending. So I'll quickly try that again. There we go. Paste special and transpose. There we go. So we've got that content that is being converted into columns and rows in the opposite to the table. So again, a nice quick way of being able to do that. So appreciate that was a really quick run through of some tips and tricks. There is loads more in terms of how you can work with Office in a more efficient way. I know that David has got some sheets and some tips and tricks that have been shared through the Enabling Centre. So David, I'll hand over to you to close this off for the session.
That's fantastic, Tom, and you've covered so many things that I didn't know, that lots of other colleagues didn't know. There's some huge tips in there that's going to change the way that we work, I'm sure. And I can't reiterate enough how good lists can be for managing. Don't manage a list of data in Excel, manage it in lists. It's so much better. You can do so much more with it. I've just popped on screen there the up and coming events. We are taking a week off live webinars next week, but maybe I'll try and replay this one for you at midday, and for the people who aren't here this week, because we've had such a big audience. We haven't had a lot of questions in here. I have answered one of them already. but we will be putting more, and there's more on the NEP website as well. But we have posted a couple of new links this week into the team, which is a Teams guide. It's almost an etiquette guide. It's not a technical guide. It's a guide for users on what to press when. Instead of just giving a saying thanks for sending that message, giving a thumbs up in a chat message to show you've acknowledged it, all those sort of things that you can share amongst your team. And then we're picking up on the Federation. How do you as a user know that you can use Federation? And those guides are there. I've put some simple URLs. We've pasted them in the chat so you can use them. So please get involved. I say we're not around next week, so join us again the week after, where we've got the webinar on Stop Search Scrutiny, collaboration workshop coming up, Operation Hampshire on the 9th of March. That's a really important one, where we're making the app available to all forces so they can start using it, and a targeted hotspot patrol power app the following week. So there's lots coming up. We'll probably do another one of these because I think there's so many more tips we can do. Replay it, take the bits you want to, but do visit the Enabling Centre, where we've put those new guides and all this sort of tips and trips are in there in the Enabling Centre. So you've got these guides, and remember, you've got all the tools in the modern learning pathways that are there to give you more and more tips that you can build all these content on your own forces. So thanks, Tom. You can take a breath now. Amazing bit of work. I'm sure people will be replaying this a lot. See you soon.
Bye-bye.